Yeah, the exact identity, some scholars say bin Mus'ab, Qabus bin Mus'ab, and some say Al-Walid bin Mus'ab. So the explanation is that one was initially the Fir'aun and he passed away, then Walid took over. And also it is said that Fir'aun is his actual name. So the scholars differ about this. Some say Fir'aun is like a laqab, like similar to how you have Kisra, like you have the Caesar of Rome, or you have Kisra of the Faras of the Persians. You have Najashi with the Abyssinians. You have Tubba with the in the Yemen, right? So so some scholars are of that view that it's actually a title. But from looking into the Quran and the way the word is used, like in the time of Yusuf Islam, he's referred to Al-Malik, Al-Aziz, with Mu'arraf bi Al, right? Well, Fir'aun is never used. He's used as a name. It's غير منصرف. It's not declinable, right? Like Haman, like Qarun, like, so that seems to be the most correct view, that his actual name is Fir'aun. Is Fir'aun. Allah knows best, But these are the names that are generally given. Al-Walid bin Mus'ab, Fir'aun. So the key thing is that the name, Fir'aun is what is in the Quran, and as long as we are clear that these are Arab Amalika rulers and they are not Qibtis, Egyptian Qibtis, if we do not make that mistake, then we don't have all those issues like you have the Yahud and the Nasara having, because you have many Yahud now, because what happened is, when they discovered that they're able to get into archaeology and get into Egypt and start digging and whatever else, they thought that this is going to support their version of the story, right? They thought that when we dig up all the things about Ramses II and whatever else, which is around 1200, 1250, around that time, that all is going to confirm everything, but didn't confirm anything, right? So now you have you have these Jews who are writing books. You have one called what's his name? I think Finkelstein. You have other one, Ze'ev, I've forgotten his name now. But they've actually written books. And what they're saying is, well, it seems like it's all myth and fiction, really. Maybe, there was some little story somewhere, but it's been exaggerated in the Bible, right? So they have this problem because they've assumed that the rule, that Fir'aun was Qibti, was Egyptian. That's not true. All our sources say that they are Amalika Arabs. And so if we now go back and we look into the history, you will actually find that there was a small period of time of about 180 years in the whole of Egyptian history where some foreign invaders came and they took over that part of Egypt, and the Qibtis went south. And when Fir'aun was drowned and destroyed, basically we know in the Quran that all of his junud, all of his soldiers, all of his the Al-Fir'aun, his family, his whatever, all the jund, all destroyed. And then after him, there was a ruler called Abu Fis. Abu Fis, his name is, yeah? And you will find in the Egyptian records of history, because they're very good historians, there are letters which are going backwards and forth between the Qibti ruler and this Abu Fis, and there's wars taking place between them, right? These letters are actually present and exist, right? And we have them, and there's discussions taking place between them, and he's threatening them. He's like goading them on. We're not scared of you. Do you want a war? We'll have a war, whatever, right? So that arrogance led him, the Egyptians, to come and to destroy. So when Fir'aun was destroyed, it was like a chain reaction for the whole empire to be completely destroyed and wiped out, right? So then the Qibtis came back. They basically took back control of that region, which today is Cairo and Ismailia, that area there. They took control of that. And then that in turn led to them the empire falling in all the other regions as well, right? So now there are some Western historians and writers who are acknowledging, yes, there was this period of time where there were these Hyksos people who are basically Arabs, the Amalika, who invaded Egypt and were in control in that particular time. Now, if we stick to that story, this now has so many implications on so many other things, right? First of all, it shows that the claim of the Yahud that Bani Israel were there from 500 years, nonsense, absolute nonsense, not true, right? Also, to imply that the Qibti, that the Egyptian rulers were the ones who were the tyrants and this and whatever, it's not true either, because they weren't, right? They didn't oppress you, right? And likewise, also the claims of the Christians who were trying to prove the Bible and whatever else, but all that's false as well, because you got the wrong set of rulers, right? So that thing is very important to distinguish, that we're not speaking about, there are no pharaohs of Egypt, right? The Amalika Fir'aun, that's who they were, and the Egyptians had nothing to do, the Qibti rulers had nothing to do with that. That's why there's nothing in their history about this, because it didn't happen under their rule, right? They were down south. And also, as we see in the Quran, Allah mentions that He completely destroyed what Fir'aun used to do and what they used to build. So everything what was done, it was destroyed. You won't find anything. Yeah. No, with let the adhan finish. As I mentioned to you, if you look at the genealogy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, as I said, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is descended from a person by the name of Aram, and Aram is one of the sons of Sam, who is the son of Nuh alayhi salam. Fucking highway, I found it, yeah. So you have Sam, who is the son of Nuh alayhi salam. And from Sam come the Arabs, generally everyone who is in the Arabian Peninsula, up into Iraq, Sham, Syria, all that general region, the Arabs you find come from him. So Sam had a son, so you have Nuh, his son called Sam, and then you have a son called Aram. And Aram, he had numerous sons. From them was the father of Iyaad and the father of Thamud. Right? So the Iyaad and the Thamud are well before Ibrahim alayhi salam. Well before Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right? So these are Arab nations that came and they were destroyed. Well before Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam is around the year 2000, 1900 BC. Right? So these people used to be known as the Arameans. The Iyaad and the Thamud. They were known as the Arameans. So when they passed away, the people who were from that offspring were known as general as the Arameans. And from them came Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right? Ibrahim alayhi salam came from them. So basically, really, the genealogy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's an Arab in the sense that he's from the peninsula, originating from the peninsula, but the language he spoke was Aramean, right? Aramean is a dialect of Arabic. It's similar. That's why all these civilizations that you see that they say they were in Iraq, they actually originated in the Arabian Peninsula, right? The Assyrian Empire, the Akkadian Empire, there's all these, different empires that existed. They're all speaking dialects of Arabic, right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was from that general area, right? So the lineage is from what is generally the inhabitants of the Arabian Peninsula. And then he gave birth to Ishaq and Ismail. So their language was Aramean, right? He settled in Mecca. And from Mecca, Ismail alayhi salam, he married into a tribe called the Jurhum. The Jurhum. And the Jurhum were from Yemen. And their language was pure Arabic. Pure Arabic, because the pure Arabic had been passed on somehow, and so they speak pure Arabic. So he married into that family, and he acquired the pure Arabic tongue, right? And then that was passed on through into the into that lineage. As for Ishaq and his offspring, they remained speaking Aramaic, and the Aramaic, they moved, and so that's why the language of the Arab in general was Syriac, Aramaic, and Arabic, all similar. And that's why when you see in the Quran, the language between Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, they all speak in the same language. Do you understand? They weren't speaking to Qibtis, Egyptians, because they have their own lineage. Qibtis come from Ham. Ham is the son of Nuh, Ham, and from Ham come what we find in Africa, the Kush, and the other, whatever the Qibtis, all of that is from the lineage of Ham. They have a different language, right? And so this is like another proof again that our version of history is the correct history. What our Islamic sources say about the Fir'aun and whatever else is the correct history. You tell from the names, it's very, very clear. Yeah. This Quran batil, is false, it's a lie, it's a kadhib, because there are about 20-30 mummies which are preserved. So how can that be true then if all these other mummies are preserved as well then? It's not true. This was something spread by an individual called Maurice Bucaille back in the 80s. He wrote a book called The Quran, Bible and Science, which is full of lies and untruths and falsehoods. The proper explanation of the body of Fir'aun, according to the Mufassirin, and also this brings into the issue of where exactly was he drowned. Even the Yahud are not sure. Some say the Red Sea on the side of Arabia. Some say the Red Sea on the side of Egypt, because there's two parts, isn't there? There's the Egyptian side and then there's the Arabian side, right? Some say no, it was further down in the bridge between Ethiopia and Yemen. Bab al-Mandal they call it, right? It's a stretch of 20 miles, right? Some say, so they even then they are not agreed upon where it actually happened. But what our sources say, what the Quran says, and what we see is that the Bani Israel could physically see with the eyes, with the vision of the eyes, Fir'aun and his troops being destroyed. And they physically saw with the eyes, they recognized his body, because what happened is they first of all disbelieved that Fir'aun was dead. So Allah Azza wa Jal ordered that river to spit out his body and to put it on the coast, so they could see themselves that he was there with his shield, that this is Fir'aun who is dead, that he's died, he's dead, right? So that's what the ayah means, that this day have we preserved your body so that you might be a sign, meaning a sign to Bani Israel that indeed you are dead, right? And then after that, what happened to his body? It definitely wasn't saved as a mummy, because he was not an Qibti to begin with. He's not Egyptian. If you have the right history, you won't have these problems. Do you understand? All these stupid nonsense that we are fed by non-Muslims who are trying to make fools of us, and for us to misunderstand our own sources and texts. Do you understand? So Egyptians would mummify their bodies, right? But here with the Arabs, they didn't used to do that. Say that again? No, Misr is that area, but we see the Egyptians and all the nations that ruled over Egypt never called it Misr. Right? If you go back to the original rulers of Egypt, going back 3, 4, 5,000 years, they used to call it, there's a name call it, they call it Het Kapta. Right? This then what led to the naming of Al-Gibt and Egypt or Egypt, right? That transformation. So even the nations who conquered them and ruled over them, like the Romans at one time, the Greeks at one time, the Persians at one time, they all referred to that land as Al-Gibt, right? So, and because Fir'aun was not an Egyptian, he is an Amalik Arab, right? It's important for us to understand that distinction, that the Quran says Misr, and the Sunnah says Misr, and our scholars say Misr, right? If we don't make that distinction, then we fall back into that same problem of saying, well, it was the Egyptian pharaohs when it wasn't. It was the Egyptian rulers when it wasn't the Egyptian rulers. Do you understand? So the Misr is that region where today it's basically Cairo, Ismailiyah, that fertile region known as a trade route and a trade hub. That area. Yeah, that area. Yeah, basically that area, yeah. Again, you have to understand that borders and boundaries are not the same over thousands of years. Do you understand? So what is today the state of Egypt going all the way down south, whatever, that's not what Misr means necessarily when it's referred to in the Quran. It's referring to that top area, right? Whereas to the Egyptians, Al-Gibt, it means maybe something different. Yeah. So, inshallah, if your children are taught in school about the Egyptian pharaohs, just make it clear to them that it wasn't the Egyptian pharaohs. There's no evidence for that.